I'm here with a very special guest today, Coach Joe Lizana, on episode, I don't even know what, 89, I think, of the podcast. We've done a bunch of these episodes. So, Coach, thank you very much for joining me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Coach, I think the first time I met you and most of my encounters with you have been in the weight room, and I'm always in there doing things, but I hardly ever see you in there working out. But, you know, based on your muscles and you're walking around and you're a pretty jacked dude, when do you have time to get in the weight room yourself?
Well, you know, that's funny. When COVID hit, I enjoy working out. When COVID hit, I kind of said, hey, I'm tired of this. So I actually bought a bunch of equipment and put it in my basement. So that's how I begin my day every day, is stumbling down to the basement and working out. So I'll do it at home.
Early morning?
Early morning, yes. Get a bowl of cereal and down the stairs I go.
Nice. What's your routine like? What do you like to do in the weight room?
Well, I always get 5 days of cardio, and then I'll have a chest day, a back day, shoulder day, and then legs in between those.
Mm-hmm. So as a football player, when did you start working out yourself? Middle school, high school, afterwards?
In high school, it was kind of an emphasis, and then all through college, and I really enjoy it. If I miss a day or two, I can really feel it mentally.
Yeah.
So I enjoy it.
I always think, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. I'm like, do I really want to go up there and work out? And I never really regret whether it's something little in the weight room or it's a light run or something. I always feel so much better after doing something.
Well, I've seen you in there, and you're a worker. So.
Just little things, but it does help. It helps the mental state for sure.
Absolutely. I think I get more out of it mentally than physically.
Yeah, it definitely clears your mind, It just makes things a little bit simpler. Things don't bother you as much after a nice workout.
That's absolutely correct. I believe that.
Yeah. What do you think about the new setup in the new weight room here at Gilman?
I think it's exciting, and one of the things that is so exciting about it is the whole community can use it, like yourself, the staff. I also think it's a wonderful magnet for kids that are looking at different schools, and they see that facility, and I think it's a great draw for Gilman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I was applying to Gilman and looking for a job, it's not like it mattered too much to me as a coach coming in, but they didn't really even show me the weight room setup beforehand. They were like, yeah, we'll get to that later, but now it's something that's the first stop
Right.
for a student athlete to check out the large and luxurious weight room we have here.
Yeah, and there's so many different athletic activities that Gilman offers. Everybody gets to use it. So again, it's great for the whole community.
Yeah. So thinking about high school athletes and the benefit of hitting the weight room, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, because as one of the football coaches and a lacrosse coach and just coaches in general, a lot of the times they're trying to get their guys in the weight room. What do you think? Why is it so important for our guys to utilize that facility, do you think?
That's a great question. And it's funny if you look back, way back in the day, coaches would actually dissuade their athletes from getting into the weight room because they said, hey, you get too bulky, you lose flexibility, you're not fluid. And obviously that turned out to be all false, a false narrative. And since then, all the different benefits that you get, it's actually the opposite. You get the strength, you get the explosion, the flexibility. It's just everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even for non-athletes, I think the major piece of the weight room is confidence, because if you're in the weight room, you're working out. We talked about the mental benefits. It does tend to build your confidence after doing a session in there, I think.
I think that's a great point. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, as a young person, as a young man, like being, physically fit, you just have a mental edge, and you've done something that's somewhat difficult in your day that gives you a boost, I think.
I agree, and I think it also energizes you, and helps you out through all the other activities and mental, physical, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, the football team, how are you guys utilizing the weight room? What do you guys do? What's your routine in there?
We try to get 2 lifts in a week, and we're kind of in and out. It's all business because obviously we're practicing during the week. So Monday's a big lift day for us. Monday we'll do new play install, and we'll review what we think the bad guys are going to do to us on Friday afternoon, what they're going to run, how they're going to line up, and so that'll be a short practice, and then we get into the weight room then. Then we also try to get a lift in Thursday. So we're trying to at least get 2 lifts in during the season.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I think I see some guys in there, even if it's not a lift day, they're doing some stuff on their own in the weight room too.
Yeah, it's funny. Some kids you got to throw out of there.
Right.
They'll come in, they'll lift every day, and you go, hey, you can't do that. You need to have an off day so you can rebuild and get the benefits that you achieved from the lift yesterday. So yeah, it's funny. Some kids you got to throw them out.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a challenge of the new weight room is that so many people want to use it, and it's great because you have a lot of guys in there and there's so much space. But maybe the next challenge, and I'm sure you guys are talking about this in athletics, is how to teach them about working out and about lifting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And so many. Also, the weight room is changed a little bit from the older when there were free weights, but there also were a lot of machines. And this is really all free weights for the most part. So yeah, I think there's some teaching that needs to go on, and they're getting it. They're eager.
Mm-hmm.
So it's working out.
So let's talk a little bit about football. How's the season been going, and how would you maybe characterize the culture of Gilman football right now?
That's another great. You get a lot of great questions, Jake. I think the culture is really trending in the right way. I think all the kids are on. But Coach Van Zyle's done a fantastic job in both establishing what he expects as a culture and implementing it. And I think the kids are really responding to it. And right now, I think we're off the top of my head, I think we're 3-4. Every game, with the exception of Spalding, we've been right there. We could have last week against Calvert Hall. We kind of spotted them 21 points early. It was our mistake. They played hard. They're a good team, and you can't really do that. You can't dig that hole early.
Mm-hmm.
But we dug that hole early, and the kids just kept battling and they kept fighting, and we ended up tying up the game at one point. At one point, it was 28-28 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Coming back from a 21 point deficit. And I think that's a great testimony to the kids. I also think it's a great testimony to the culture that Coach Van Zyl has established and continues to reinforce. Our kids didn't quit. It would have been easy to quit when you're down 21, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So I think that's, to me, is the best testimony.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, I was walking up to the game and it was 21-0 on the scoreboard, and I got to see it was a very exciting game. It was an unfortunate outcome for you guys, but 21-0, what do you say? Like, what do you say to the guys at that point? Did you really even have to say anything to them, or were they pretty motivated to come back from that deficit?
Well, I mean, the one thing you say, you don't know if it resonates or if they're listening, is just, hey, keep fighting and just keep going one play at a time. But we really didn't have to say anything to the kids, and that's why I think everybody was so proud of them. You didn't have to say that. Mm-hmm. They just kept playing and they kept fighting, and you really didn't need to say anything. They knew what they had to do, and they kept going.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is culture right there. So tell me a little bit about your football background. When did you first get introduced to football? What was your experience as a young player? And how did football become a love for you, at a young age, I guess? I would guess. I don't know.
Went to high school in Boise, Idaho, believe it or not. As a kid, we moved. Every 2 or 3 years, we would move somewhere, and we would move somewhere far away. So I ended up high school in Boise, Idaho, and went to Idaho State University and played football at Idaho State University, and played there for 2 years. And there was a coaching change and some things, and I said, maybe it's time to leave Idaho State University. And all my family's in the South. My father's family's in Mississippi. My mother's family's in Alabama. So I wanted to kind of go home. So I transferred to University of North Alabama, and was there for spring ball, and got hurt, and had an ACL injury, and set out a year, and came back, and then we had a little communication breakdown as far as my scholarship money, and I said, well, I guess it's time to leave North Alabama, and I ended up at Towson. And played 2 years at Towson, and it was great. Loved it. It was a real blessing. There were times where probably I was going through the ACL rehabilitation and didn't know how I was going to get through school, where maybe I didn't think it was a blessing. But looking in the rearview mirror, it's a great testimony to, hey, God's going to get you where He wants you. And loved it up here. Met my wife up here. Had a great experience at Towson. So it was a real blessing.
So tell me a little bit about Idaho first. It's kind of, is that when football was introduced to you when you were in Idaho?
No, I played as a kid. Always played football and basketball. Never played baseball. Had a little trouble putting that round bat on that round ball. But
I never played baseball either.
Oh man, you throw a curve at me, I look like Jerry Lewis. It's not good. But really enjoyed football. Really enjoyed basketball, and it was kind of fun too in Idaho because it was in Boise, so it was pretty good, decent population. But it was also one of those deals where there wasn't a lot going on in Boise, so you'd get a huge crowd at the game. You get 5,000, 6,000 people at a football game wasn't unusual. We played all our home games in Boise State Stadium. They didn't have the blue turf then; they had green turf. But we'd get 5,000 or 6,000 at the game just because there wasn't a lot going on in Boise, Idaho. That was the thing to do, was to go to the games. So it was great. Really enjoyed it. Had a couple different options to different places I could have gone. Could have gone to University of Idaho. Oregon State was a possibility, and then Idaho State. And looking back, I probably made an 18-year-old decision, which maybe I shouldn't have made. I wasn't in love with Idaho State from day one. But again, that's all part of the journey, and that's all part of God getting you where He wants you to be.
Right. It's very hard. I mean, I'm thinking about some of these athletes and also just students who are applying to colleges right now and thinking about what they want to do in the future. It's very hard when you're 17, 18 years old to think about, 4 years down the line, what am I going to be like? I think about that a lot too with my younger sister. She went to West Point, and when you're 17 years old and you're in high school and you're thinking about going to college, you're like, oh, West Point's campus is beautiful and I could go here and it's free, and those things maybe come to your mind, and you're like, maybe I'll, military is obviously on your mind because it's an academy, but you're thinking about some of those other things, but you're not really thinking about, I'm going to be in the military for 4 years and then 5 years after that, right? It's a huge investment, and it's a huge commitment, and it's really, it's your whole life that you're thinking about, which that's not for everybody. College goes by really fast, but a lot of it is it's really a big decision, I think.
It's kind of funny. Parents are so involved now, and maybe to a fault, but back when I was a kid, parents really weren't that involved in stuff. They'd say, hey, you'll figure it out. And it would have been okay with me if somebody sat down and kind of said, hey, let's spreadsheet this for a minute. But I want to interview you one day, Jake. You played lacrosse at Harvard. I don't know a lot of Harvard men.
Yeah.
Harvard's a long way from Idaho State, I'll tell you that.
Well, I had an interesting experience with Harvard because they weren't really recruiting me when I was in high school. The head coach didn't really know who I was. He didn't really show much interest in me. But I was looking at some of the other Ivy League schools up in that area, and this is always my advice to younger athletes who are getting recruited, is like, you can never go wrong with just picking up the phone and giving a coach a call, because coaches get thousands of emails a day. Kids, they want to go to their school and they just go through. Maybe they look at them, but and they can't respond to everyone.
Sure.
But when I was in high school, I don't know how I had the audacity to pick up the phone and call up the head coach, but I was like, hey, man, like I'm going to be up in the area. And he said, yeah, of course you can come by and I'll show you around and we can talk a little bit. But if I never made that phone call, I would have never had the opportunity of going there. And I think that's really important for young guys who are, thinking about where they want to go. And if they have a dream school in mind, you can't really go wrong because the voice-to-voice interaction is much different than just an email that you can send out. So, yeah, that kind of took a shot in the dark there.
That's a great message.
Yeah, but the recruiting is another, I guess, piece of coaching. And I don't know, how do you guys handle that as high school coaches now, like guiding guys through the recruiting process?
I'm not that involved in that portion. I was kind of a fill-in because Coach Van Zyl was fulfilling his contract at St. Paul's last semester, and all I would do was kind of connect the coaches that would come to campus to meet with the different kids. That's kind of a unique. That's a great question because I think everybody's story and everybody's journey is unique, and I don't think there is a particular formula that you can use because, again, everybody's situation is so unique, and I almost feel bad for kids now because of the portal. It's really complicated everything. These college coaches, it used to be they would focus exclusively on high school kids for their incoming class. Well, now they're kind of cruising through the portal to see who's available.
Right.
And that just complicates an already complicated situation.
I guess the portal came about during COVID. I assume that was happening in the lacrosse world is during COVID, but I guess it's always been around and it's just maybe more so utilized now that so many guys are transferring.
I think it's relatively new. It used to be if you transferred, you had to use your redshirt year or sit out a year. But there's been so much pressure on the NCAA with threatening of lawsuits. I think that they have kind of acquiesced and said, okay, we'll make accommodations and try to appease everybody and make everybody happy, just like the nil money. I mean, the nil money, which is, as you know, name, image, and likeness, that materialized from a threatened lawsuit, and the NCAA just said we're not going to win. Fine, you can have nil money. So like with the portal, you could theoretically play at 4 different schools, 4 different years.
Right. That's tough to do. I mean, what was it like for you transferring a couple of times? Was it when you found Towson, did you know that you found the right spot for you?
It's a good question. It's funny, when I was at Idaho State, I kind of knew I goofed up early on. I went, oops. Went to North Alabama and really liked it there. Really liked the campus and everything. And then when I came to Towson, it was almost a forced choice. I remember looking at a map, going, okay, if I just stay on 95, I'll run into this place. But I loved Towson and was happy right away. And I think it was kind of fun to experience different campuses and different areas and different people. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that same thing the other day. Like, I had an amazing time at Harvard and loved the school. Lacrosse was a little shaky, but that's all right. But I was watching the Tennessee-Alabama game and watching how crazy the Tennessee fans and students were going, and I was like, wow, it'd be pretty cool to go to a Southern big football school. So was Towson was that the first time that you were in Maryland before? You said you looked at it on a map. That was the first time.
That was the first time I was in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast. Yeah, absolutely.
So after you graduated, you chose to stay around this area?
what I'd wanted to do was coach college football. And right out of Towson, I took a job at Western New Mexico University.
Jeez, you're all over the place.
I know. In Silver City, New Mexico. And I still remember my compensation package was $2,000, free dorm room, and free meal ticket, and free grad school. And that was it was an NAIA school, which I don't know if you're familiar with NAIA, but it's kind of a sister of the NCAA. You don't see it so much out here, but with an NAIA school, there's kind of no rules. We had guys that were 30 years old on the team. It was everybody had a story. Everybody had a story at Western New Mexico. And then I came back to Towson and coached, and I was kind of a graduate assistant type coach. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, and I applied around for jobs and never materialized. Mm-hmm. So I kind of figured, okay, it's time to move on.
So what has it been like for you, I guess, starting at Gilman? And I know you had a couple sons that went to Boys Latin. Why did you choose to apply for a job at Gilman, and what's it been like here so far?
Oh, well, it's been great. Really love the culture, love the community, and one of the great testimonies to that is you look at all the alumni that have come back. Share an office with Ned Imla. He's an alumni. Coach with Alec Birch. He's an alumni. Russell Wren. You just go on and on. There's so many alumni that have come back here, and I just think that's a kind of defines the culture and the community that Gilman offers. I coached at Boys Latin for 9 or 10 years, and then started coaching at Gilman, and a job opened up, and so let me update the old resume, and fortunately things worked out.
Nice. And when you were coaching at Boys Latin, what was your, I guess, what else were you doing? What was your other, I guess, career during that time?
Well, after the my quest to be a college football coach didn't materialize, I got into selling property and casualty insurance. So what we would do is we would sell insurance to companies, to businesses, like workers' comp, general liability, and automobile fleets, professional liability, that kind of thing. And that was really my career. I did that for 25 plus years, mm-hmm. and enjoyed it. It was actually fun. When probably when you hear selling insurance, you don't think of fun, but it was fun. It was fun because every day was kind of a field trip. So like one of my clients was the nation's largest builder of roller coasters. So I would have to go into this guy and say, okay, how do you build a roller coaster? And they would explain the process, and then they would explain the after the completion that the protocols that they had to follow to make sure that they were approved and that it was safe and that kind of thing. So each individual business that you would go to, they would kind of tell you how they made a living, and it was fascinating. It was like being on a field trip all the time.
Yeah, you probably learned a lot about some niche.
Really did, and met a lot of very bright, intuitive people that maybe I wouldn't have met otherwise.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it very much.
And it's pretty awesome too that you got to do something that you really excited you during the day, but also have the football piece and the competitive and sports driven piece that you always were connected with too. You kind of got the best of both worlds there.
No, I was fortunate, and I was fortunate that way. And another good thing about that profession is you do have flexibility. You're on the road a lot, usually windshield time, but you have flexibility. So yes, I agree with you. I was very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. So I usually don't ask, I usually try to keep our podcast sort of conversational, but there's one question that I wrote down that I think applies to what we're talking about. And it has to do with like advice you might give to maybe somebody from Gilman who's, coming out and getting ready for the real world. But do you have any advice that you'd give to like a smart, driven college student, maybe a Gilman graduate who's entering the real world? And what advice should they ignore? It's another good piece of it.
Wow, it's a good question. Right off the top of my head, I don't know if it's advice, but maybe it's an adjective of perseverance. There were so many times in my life, and frankly everybody's life, where there were obstacles maybe you didn't see. I had no idea I'd be at North Alabama, and then I ended up hurt. And frankly, I had a lot of trouble with my rehabilitation on my knee also. I couldn't regain my flexibility. And, and then I'm on my way to Towson, and I'm looking at a map going, I don't even know how to say it. I don't know if it's Tozin or Tonzin. I don't know where I'm going, man. I just know I'm going up 95. But the great testimony there is I persevered. I didn't quit. I didn't say, hey, things didn't work out. Let me hang this up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but I would encourage young people to persevere, because you're going to get curveballs. You're going to get things that don't go well. You're going to get problems. And if you continue to persevere and understand and appreciate that that's part of the journey, and it's a gift too. Probably what I went through as a college student enabled me in my professional life I didn't have to relearn that lesson. I had already learned that lesson. To persevere, and if it's not, and adapt also. So that would be the one thing. The second part of your question is what should you ignore?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
Yeah, that is a tough question. I'm not sure I can answer that one either, but I would probably encourage people to listen to a lot of different areas and a lot of different advice, but also have the ability to develop a filter, because you're not have the ability to analyze and be analytical about what people are telling you,
Mm-hmm.
and develop a filter and be able to say, no, that doesn't make sense. So I guess I would encourage everybody, or I would encourage young people to keep their ears open and their mind open, but also have the ability to think about it and reject some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that person that's giving you some advice, maybe that's good for them, and it's not good for you. So I would maybe say perseverance for the first half, and the second half, be discerning in what you're told and what you hear.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because there's so much noise in the world right now. You're getting advice from, your football coach, you're getting different advice from your parents, your friends are telling you some things. I was thinking about this podcast that we do and how many podcasts there are out there that people might be listening to, and there's millions of them now, and there's so much, from social media to the internet to things you can listen to on your phone coming at you, and it's very hard to make a decision or listen to yourself. Like that's such a valuable skill that probably not many people have.
It's getting complicated, isn't it? Especially when you're 18 and your frontal lobes aren't fully developed. So it gets real complicated. So
right. I feel for some of the students and the athletes here that have to make decisions and figure things out with all of that noise going on sometimes. It's definitely difficult. Yeah, interesting. So you talked a little bit about your ACL, and I have an advisee who he's finally back and playing again, but he tore his ACL twice. And I've been thinking about how, what it takes to come back from an injury like that, not only the first time, but another time. And in your experience, like, what was that injury and that adversity to you, and how'd you pull yourself back out there and persevere through that?
That could probably be another podcast. But it's funny. I tear my ACL, have it operated on, and I couldn't get my flexibility back. I couldn't get my extension back, and I was it just wouldn't come back, and my leg was crooked, and I went over to see the New Orleans Saints team doctor, and he looked at it and he goes, "This happens sometimes. Sometimes they'll freeze up. So it's unusual, but it happens." And he says, "You're about 6 months post-op. You're probably not going to get it back." And so that was a long car ride home. And
what year was this for you?
That was I was in between. Well, it happened at North Alabama, so it was like before I'd come to I'd transferred to Towson, and I remember. So I was living in Mississippi, where I'm from, and I was working at a restaurant where you served. We had catfish and chicken on the menu. If you weren't eating catfish or chicken, you weren't eating. And I would do that at night, and then I would go to this rehabilitation place in the morning. And I remember there was a young lady who had just graduated from LSU, and I went to meet her and told her what the doctor said, and she was like, "He's wrong. We'll get it done." And we worked very, very hard on getting the extension and the flexion back, and praise heaven it came back. And so it was a long road, and it was and again, it kind of goes back to the earlier conversation of, you're going to get some curveballs, you're going to get some bad things, and you have to adapt and persevere. And everyone has to do it. I don't care what your economic situation is or what your family situation. You got to give that curveball.
Yeah, and it definitely prepares you. It prepares you. That's why people think about sports as metaphorical for life, because it's just, at the end of the day, it could be your passion, right? Football is your life, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a game, and you're trying to make it back out there and play, but it's supposed to prepare you for other things that happen down the road.
I think that's very true, and that was certainly the case with me, because I think when other situations arose, I was like, okay, I've been here before. Let's go fix it.
Right. Let me ask you a question about mentors and leaders in your life. Who's been kind of, in your life or with football, the best leader that you've had the experience of being around, and maybe what did you learn from that leader?
You know what? That's the one question I think you've answered today that that you've asked today that I can answer and don't have to think. When I came to Towson, probably wasn't. Probably was a little cynical at that point. I'd gone from Idaho to Alabama, and now I'm going to Maryland, which I have no idea where it's at. And there was a guy named Phil Albert who was the head coach at Towson. And again, I was probably a little cynical and maybe a little self-pity. Probably wasn't a super pleasant guy to be around. And I'm hanging around with this guy, right? And this guy's talking about things I'd never heard of before. He's talking about, he's telling kids, "Hey, I love you." I'm like, who's this guy, man? And he's talking about, you're going to be a great father. It's important to be a great father, important to be a great husband. And I'd never heard that before. I'd never been exposed to that. And frankly, when I first heard it, I'm kind of, again, being a little cynical, going, this guy's just talking. He's making noise. And really kind of went out of my way to hang around him and listen to him and kind of study him, maybe for the wrong reasons in the beginning. Maybe I wanted to expose him for not being genuine. Well, he was genuine, and had a tremendous impact on my life and my thought process. Um, he actually coached at Towson for years. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. Coached at Towson for years. Then he was with the San Diego Chargers for a while. Then he came back and taught at Towson. As a matter of fact, Coach Van Zyl had took a class from him when he attended Towson.
What did he teach?
He taught a class on leadership, and he would have done a great job. I didn't have the opportunity to take that class, but I'm sure he did a great job because he was a fantastic leader. But he was a great guy, great storyteller. He'd start telling stories. And Coach Van Zyl shared with me that they go to the leadership class, and it was very substantive and had good content, and he got a lot out of it. But he'd also spend a lot of time telling stories. And then and then he says he told the class, okay, we're going to have a midterm, and everybody's like, a midterm on what? Your stories? I mean, but just a great guy, great man, great heart, and I think that probably goes back to God getting you where God wants you to be, because that guy was who I needed to be around at that stage in my life. So that one's an easy one. He actually recently passed away maybe 2 years ago, and I actually gave the eulogy at his funeral.
Wow.
Great guy.
Yeah. Wow. I teach this class on leadership and character, and
Really?
What's interesting is you talk about he teaches a leadership class. I teach for seniors here at Gilman and Bryn Mawr and Roland Park. But when you talk about leadership, it's so interesting to me, even though I teach it, that it's so hard to define what leadership is. I don't even know if I could define that term or what a leader is with words, because it is something that you need to see examples of and to hear stories about, and you can recognize what a leader is. Like you recognized maybe after a couple weeks and a couple months of getting to know this coach, how he was a leader. But when you're talking about how in his class he told stories, I think that's interesting because a lot of leadership can be, I guess, intuitively understood through stories and examples instead of just a definition of what a leader is.
Yeah, it comes in so many different, the character part, and that's, I think it's wonderful. Frankly, I didn't know I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know you taught those classes. I think it's wonderful you do that. I think it's wonderful that Gilman offers it, and I think it's something that's so important. And character, maybe you can define it or put your finger on it a little bit easier, but leadership comes in so many different examples or forms. You certainly have vocal leaders, then you have leaders by example, and so it comes in so many forms. It is hard to define. The one story that was probably off topic, but it was so darn funny. I remember at Towson my junior year, we played a school. I don't recall who we were playing, but we were getting beat. And we were down by like 10 points, and there was like a minute left in the game. So Coach Albert brings the whole team together, and he says, look, here's what's going to happen. No, we just scored. Let's see, I'm trying to get the story right. We just scored, and we had to, no, they scored, they were kicking off. So he says, here's what's going to happen. We're going to run the kickoff back for a touchdown. Now, we got a minute left in the game. He says, we're going to run the kickoff back for a touchdown. Then we're going to onside kick it, and we're going to recover it. And then we're going to go down the field, and we're going to throw a touchdown pass with no time left. Okay? Well, he says that, and I'm kind of going, hey, man, I love your enthusiasm, but come on, partner. It's exactly what happened. They kick the ball off. We run it back for a touchdown. We onside kick and recover. and we threw a touchdown pass with no time left. So I got on board. I got on board with my man that day.
Right.
I said, hey, I'm a believer now.
Right. How could you not?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's interesting because that's one, I guess, strain of leadership or commonality of a lot of leaders that I've kind of learned about is that most of them have a vision, right? Because if you don't have a vision like that or a path forward, then no one's really going to follow you if you don't have confidence in what's going to happen. And I guess the other day we talked about this on the last podcast a little bit too, but I had my class read a little bit of Franklin Roosevelt talking to the nation at his inaugural address. 1933, he's just getting into the White House, and he's, mid Great Depression, I think, or like right on the onset of the Great Depression. And, the nation is just like, has no hope, but he draws out in that speech a very hopeful path forward, and it's pretty half glass full, which, I guess you have to have that vision and that enthusiasm if you're going to get people to follow you and to rebound from something that's not going your way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Unfortunately, I think the leadership can kind of take and you would know more about this than I do since you teach a class, but it can take a wrong. We read about it in the paper. When maybe someone who's charismatic and has some leadership abilities can maybe go the wrong way, and he or she has followers.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be maybe a not good thing sometime too, which is interesting. You can't ignore it.
Yeah, I think that the hopeful qualities are contagious, and you find that out on the football field or on the lacrosse field or any team. Like the positivity is contagious; it rubs off amongst the players, but the negativity is almost even worse and more contagious, right? Some people start complaining when they're down or blaming the refs or blaming the coaches, and then the whole thing just goes downhill from there.
Sure.
I'm sure you've had a lot of, and I do too, a lot of examples of being on a team and the complaining and the, arguing and blaming starts to just spiral.
Of course, yes.
What's the best team that you've ever been a part of?
Well, you know what? The best team. I probably haven't said a lot of wonderful things about Idaho State, but my freshman year at Idaho State, we won the national championship, and that was fun. That was fun, and I got to play. I was a special teams guy and a backup, but it was fun because we were rolling. That would be one example. The other example I would probably use is at Towson, and we were good. When I was there, my junior year we were Division II, and then my senior year we went 1AA or FCS. But the thing about Towson, and Coach Albert, who I referenced earlier, used to say it, at Towson everybody had a story. I wasn't the only double transfer. We had other guys that maybe got thrown out of their first college because they got in trouble. We had other kids that flunked out. But the thing at Towson is everyone there was getting a second chance, and so everybody that was there getting that second chance appreciated that second chance, and that was just a great atmosphere to be around, where people maybe said, hey, plan A didn't work out so hot, but I get another bite at the apple, and here I am. That was fun to be around because people were so appreciative of the opportunities they had, and it was a great atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. What do you think makes a great team? So you're talking about people on the team that are coming back and they realize that they have this second chance, so they're attacking it maybe with more energy and enthusiasm, and I guess, what would you say, they're just more excited about it than maybe they would have. But I always think of football, even more than any other sport, as the ultimate team sport, and I'm curious what you think makes a great football team. Like, what components comprise a great football team?
You always have these good questions. You have good questions. I mean, are you having an on week or?
It's because we've done so many podcast episodes.
You're hot, Jake. You're hot, baby. It's kind of funny. Certainly, there would be a lot of different characteristics I could touch on, and I'm sure you've been around it, being an athlete. It's almost that belief system. So you fall behind, and you've got that belief system that, hey, we're going to win. We're going to be successful. I don't know how. I don't know who's going to step up, but we're going to step up, and we're going to win. You just know you are. You believe you are. Conversely, back to the conversation about leadership, I don't know if you've been in those situations where it's the opposite. 2 plays go wrong, and you go, here we go.
Same old
here
story.
We go, man. We're down the drain. We're gonna lose. We always lose. And I'm stealing from you at this point, but that's a great also metaphor for life, or being a husband or being a father or any other facet of your life, where you say, hey, it's going to work out. I'm going to make it work out, and I'm going to find a way, or I'm going to make a way. And those great teams are the guys that say, hey, I'm going to find a way, or I'm going to make a way. We will be successful. They have that belief. It's not false. It's not something that's conjured up. It's a sincere belief.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also flip that coin over, where you've got the not perfect situations where, hey, it's not going to go our way. And that's a hard ship to turn around. That's a tough ship to turn around.
Yeah, because you can't fake a belief in your team or a trust in your team. And I always think about when in college lacrosse, when we would start to go down and we didn't have a very good foundation of belief in our program or our team. It just wasn't what it was. And now Harvard lacrosse is much better now, because there's like new coaches, new systems, and just a new culture. But when I was there, our coach would always turn around and be like, bench, like, let's get it up and make sure you guys are making some noise. And you can't I love when coaches do that and tell the bench to get excited when what's on the field is not inspiring anyone. Like, it's got to be authentic. Right. The bench is going to be going crazy when things that are good are happening, when we're winning. You can't just yell at the bench.
False enthusiasm, right?
Right. Go high five somebody, or you can't fake it.
Right.
So I think that trust and that foundation, you've got to build that enthusiasm. It's got to be natural, which is hard to do, especially if you're not winning. Got to figure out a way.
I agree completely. But the beautiful thing is once it's established, it gets real fun real quick, because the kids that are coming into the program, they see it, they sense it, they want to be a part of it. It's hard to get. But once it's part of the culture, boy, it can be a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, it just reproduces.
Sure.
And that's when you see these great players. I think about Tom Brady, and I don't know if you're a Tom Brady fan or not, but I think the one thing about Tom Brady, is when he comes into the game and it's the fourth quarter and the game's on the line, or things aren't going the Patriots' way or the Buccaneers' way now, and he comes out there, that he believes, right? Because he's been there before. He's got trust in his teammates. He's a pretty capable leader. There's no doubt. And I think that's a good example of somebody who just kind of has what it takes to build a team.
Sure. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about when the 49ers were playing the Bengals in the Super Bowl, and they've got time for one more drive, and that's it. And they're behind. They've got to score. And so Joe Montana comes into the huddle, and he's like, going, hey, look, man, we're going to do this. It's going to happen. And then he points up in the stands. He goes, hey, look, there's John Candy, the actor. And I'm sure that had a great impact on everybody in the huddle. They're going, hey, this guy's so confident that we've got a minute 30 seconds left in the game, and he's finding John Candy and making a joke about John Candy, and that becomes contagious. People go, okay,
Yeah.
This guy's in, I'm in.
They start to loosen up a little bit,
Sure.
right? Because you start to tense up in those moments. But yeah, that's a good example. Who were some of your favorite players to watch growing up?
I always Brett Favre always made me laugh. Now, Brett Favre is like from the same area in Mississippi that I am, so I was probably always leaning toward him. But he makes me laugh just because he's so enthusiastic and it has fun.
Mm-hmm.
He has fun with it. That would be the one that kind of jumps out at me for whatever reason, and maybe I need counseling, but for whatever reason, I always get a kick out of the strange guys.
Yep, I think
the
I
guys,
do too.
Yeah, the guys that kind of march to the beat of their own drum.
Yep.
Those guys always kind of make me laugh, and always liked following them. But Brett Favre's probably the one that would leap out at me. Right now, boy, I like watching. I hope I say his name right. Cooper Culp,
Mm-hmm.
the receiver for. Boy, he's good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Coach. Well, the last question I have for you is we usually do a book recommendation, and I'm wondering how much you enjoy reading, and if there's anything that you brought in or could think about for today that you'd like to recommend to anyone watching or listening here.
It's funny. I enjoy reading, and I'll find myself buying books or ordering books a lot, and I'll get about 20 pages into it, and then that's the end of that. So
it's got to really grab you.
Yeah. It's gotta. I guess it's like a first date. We better hit the ground running. So I did try to put some thought into it before today. The one book that I really enjoyed reading is I had to write it down here. It's Pistol: The Life of Pete Maravich by Mark Kriegel, Krigel. And it was so fascinating because it was I don't know how much you know about that guy, but he was a different dude. And his father was a college basketball coach. His mother had a lot of issues, and he was a strange cat. All he ever did was play basketball. That's it. And but gee whiz, he was good. So it's kind of a fascinating. I really enjoyed it because it talked about his life and he was a different guy. He's a different guy, and he was so good at what he did also. And maybe that's also a testimony that you probably don't want to be myopic in your life, because he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it affected him in his adult life because he is so focused on one area. But it really wasn't a sports book as much as it was
psychological.
Yeah, psychological, and and then one of the books, and I kind of brought. I don't even know if you can find this book anymore. It really I wanted to talk about it because it had like a big impact on me. And I remember, it's funny, I remember purchasing it in high school. And the name of the book is Expect to Win, and it was by a guy named Bill Glass. Bill Glass played professional football. And I bought it, I remember buying it in like the bargain bin. They're trying to get rid of it because nobody's buying it. And I bought it for like $3 or something. And you see the title, and I kind of, as a 17 or 18-year-old kid, I kind of thought, oh, well, this is a book about how to be more effective in a competitive atmosphere, how to succeed. And it wasn't. It was, as a matter of fact, I made a copy of the contents. The first chapter is think right thoughts, say good words, be specific, take responsibility, choose real friends, which is really kind of a interesting read, because it talks about things that I'm sure you talk about as a teacher. Surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, not pull you down.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that chapter also is hey, if that's what you want, you have to be a good friend too. You have to be authentic. You have to seek people out and lift them up. It's a two-way street. You know, you're going to attract like and kind. Let's see, handle your hurts, go the second mile, live the faith phenomenon, never give up. So, but anyway, it was like that little 120-page book is like one of my personal prized possessions. And I've asked my, I've told my kids, I have 3 sons, I said, hey, read this. Read a chapter and then let's talk about it. And I think it had an impact on them too.
I like how they're all pretty simple rules for life. They're just brief.
And very important. Very, very important. I mean, think good thoughts. How simplistic is that? Think good thoughts, but that your thoughts are going to dictate your actions. So anyway, I don't even know if that thing's in publication anymore. That's
great.
But if it is, it's a really quick read, and it's an easy read, and a lot of good content.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like the title too. My dad actually has a sign. I don't know if it's still, I guess he used to have it hanging in his office, but it says expect to win. And I just think that's a great, going to what we're talking about is, playing football or sports. It's like you got to go into the game with confidence and hope and optimism.
Yeah, I think that dovetails with everything that we've spoke about today.
And I also really like the pistol book, and I might check that out because I like biographies that go into the way that these players and these people think, because you can talk all you want about Pistol Pete's career, but I think it's interesting to think about what was his mindset, or what was on his mind all the time, or what kinds of things was he thinking about, and how did he handle different areas of his life. I know there's a book called Open about Andre Agassi, and kind of going through different points as they're happening, and on the tennis court, and I just like the psychological component to those books.
I really enjoy that also, and I'll find myself reading that a lot, and history, like a lot of history. It's kind of those 30 for 30s on ESPN. I sit and watch those things all day. So yeah, I enjoy that stuff also.
All right, well, Coach, thank you very much for coming in on the podcast today. It was a great conversation. We covered a lot of basis, a little bit about your background and some of the things that you enjoy reading, and football, and some of the, I guess, rules for life, like expect to win and think good thoughts. I think that stuff is awesome. So appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you. I been a long time since somebody wanted to talk to me, so I appreciate being here.
Awesome, thank you.